I need to write this down before I lose what's left of my mind. Before the things I've seen become too much to hold inside my head without it splitting apart at the seams. My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 28 years old, and for 6 months I worked a night shift at Secondhand Souls thrift store in Bardstown, Kentucky. What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible. Sounds like the rambling of someone who's lost touch with reality, but I swear on my mother's grave that every word is true. The store is still there, still operating, and God help whoever they found to replace me. It started the way most nightmares do, disguised as salvation. I'd been living in my 2004 Honda Civic for 3 weeks when I saw the help wanted sign. The repo man had taken my apartment on October 2nd, exactly 60 days after I'd lost my job at the warehouse. 60 days of watching $47,136 in medical debt from my mother's final months crush everything I'd built. The credit cards were maxed at $12,400. My checking account showed negative $237.42. I'd sold everything worth selling, my Xbox, my television, even my father's watch. All I had left were the clothes in my car and a phone with 7% battery that I charged at the McDonald's while pretending to consider their breakfast menu. The sign appeared in the window of Secondhand Souls like it had been waiting for me. The store sat on the corner of 3rd and Cathedral, squeezed between a condemned beauty salon and a payday loan place that had bars on the windows. I'd driven past it 100 times without really seeing it, the way you don't really see things that have always been there. But that Tuesday morning, with frost on my windshield and my stomach cramping from 2 days without food, the yellow paper seemed to glow. Help wanted, night cashier, 28 hours 50 hour immediate start. Inquire within 28.50 an hour. For overnight retail in Bardstown, where minimum wage jobs were the best most of us could hope for. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, engine off to save gas, staring at that sign. It had to be a mistake, a typo. Maybe they meant 8.50, though even that seemed generous for overnight work. The store's exterior gave nothing away. Faded blue paint peeled from wooden siding. The windows were covered with sun-bleached newspaper, except for small gaps where the tape had failed. Through one gap, I could make out shadows of furniture stacked to the ceiling. A bell rang somewhere inside, though I saw no customers entering or leaving. My phone buzzed, low battery warning. 5% now. I pushed through the door before I could talk myself out of it. The smell hit me first. Mothballs and mildew, and something else. Something sweet and cloying like flowers left too long in a vase. Racks of clothing stretched toward the back of the store, creating narrow aisles that seemed to swallow the overhead lighting. Furniture crowded every corner, armoires with doors that didn't quite close, chairs with fabric, worn to threads, mirrors that reflected at odd angles. The floor was checkerboard linoleum, black and white squares that hurt to look at directly. "Can I help you?" The voice came from behind a glass display case filled with jewelry that had turned green with age. A woman emerged from the shadows, and I had to focus to keep my expression neutral. She was tall, maybe 6'3", with grey hair pulled back so tight it stretched her features. Her dress looked like it belonged in a museum. High collar, long sleeves, fabric that rustled when she moved though I felt no breeze. But it was her stillness that made my skin crawl. Between words, between movements, she became absolutely motionless. Not the way people pause, but the way mannequins exist. "I'm here about the job," I said. "The night cashier position." Her smile revealed teeth that were too white, too straight, too many. "Of course you are. Marcus, isn't it?" I hadn't told her my name. "How did you—" "I'm Mrs. Whitmore. I own this establishment." She moved around the counter with that rustling sound, each step deliberate and somehow wrong, like she was remembering how walking worked. "We've been expecting someone like you, someone with the right qualities." Qualities? Desperation, isolation, flexibility. She said each word like she was tasting it. "The position pays $28.50 per hour, as advertised. You would work midnight to 8 a.m., Tuesday through Saturday. The store is closed to customers during these hours, but certain tasks require completion." "What kind of tasks?" "Inventory, sorting donations, cleaning, and most importantly, following the rules." She produced a clipboard from beneath the counter, though I hadn't seen her reach for it. "The night shift has very specific requirements, very specific protocols. Failure to follow them results in immediate termination. Termination hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I can follow rules, I said. Can you? Even when they seem arbitrary? Even when they contradict what your eyes tell you? Even when every instinct screams at you to run? The smart thing would have been to leave, to walk out that door and never look back. But smart things were for people with options, and I'd run out of those weeks ago. When do I start? I asked. Her smile widened, showing even more teeth. Tonight, if you're willing. But first, the rules. She handed me the clipboard. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, typed on an actual typewriter. The heading read, Protocols for Night Shift Personnel, Second-Hand Souls, established 1978. I began to read. Rule 1. Clock in at exactly midnight using the punch card machine by the back door. Never clock in early. Never clock in late. Time is observed differently after midnight. Rule 2. Count the mannequins immediately after clocking in. There should be exactly 7. If there are more, do not acknowledge the extras. If there are fewer, check the bathroom. Mirrors before proceeding with your shift. Rule 3. The donation door will knock 3 times at 12:47 a.m. Open it, accept what is given, and do not look at the donor's face. Place all donations in the sorting room and lock the door with the brass key. Rule 4. If you hear crying from the changing rooms between 1 and 3 a.m., place a children's toy outside the door. Any toy will do. Do not speak to whoever is crying. Rule 5. The cash register will ring at 2:22 a.m. Complete the transaction shown on the screen, even if no customer is visible. Take the exact change from the ceramic bowl on the counter. There is always exact change. Rule 6. Never enter the basement. The door is marked employees only, but you are not the kind of employee it means. Rule 7. At 3:33 a.m., all mirrors in the store must be covered with the black cloth from the supply closet. Do not look at your reflection after 3:33 a.m. Do not uncover the mirrors until 6 a.m. Rule 8. If you find an item with a red price tag, do not touch it with bare skin. Use the tongs from behind the register to move it to the locked cabinet. Someone will collect it. Rule 9. The radio will turn on by itself at 4 a.m. Let it play. If the song repeats more than 3 times, unplug it and hide in the supply closet until the song stops. Rule 10. Between 5 and 6 a.m., sort donations in the back room. Some items will resist sorting. Let them go where they want. Rule 11. If a customer enters despite the locked doors, serve them normally but do not accept money. They will pay in their own way. Rule 12. At 6:45 a.m., return any borrowed items to their original positions. They remember where they belong. Rule 13. Never speak the name you hear whispered in the vents. Acknowledgement is acceptance. Rule 14. If the lights flicker in sequence, front to back, 3 times, close your eyes and count to 27. The number matters. Rule 15. Clock out at exactly 8 a.m. Do not remain in the store after 8:03 a.m. Day shift follows different rules, and you are not bound by their protections. I read through the list twice, my mouth increasingly dry. Is this some kind of joke? Do I look like someone who jokes, Marcus? Mrs. Whitmore's head tilted at an angle that necks shouldn't allow. These rules have kept this establishment functioning for 46 years. They are not suggestions. They are not guidelines. They are absolute requirements for survival. I mean, employment. Survival? Employment, she corrected smoothly. The pay is deposited directly into your account each morning at 8:01 a.m. $570 minus taxes. Cash advances are available for emergency situations. $570 every night. That was $2,150 a week, over $11,000 a month. I could pay off the credit cards in 2 months, get an apartment, start rebuilding. What happened to the last night cashier? I asked. She found employment elsewhere. Mrs. Whitmore's expression didn't change. After 6 successful months, she moved on to different opportunities. And if I break a rule, then you'll understand why we pay so well. She extended her hand. Her fingers were ice cold and seemed to have too many joints. Do we have an agreement? I thought about my car, about the frost that would be on the windshield again tonight, about the hunger that had become a constant companion, about the phone calls from debt collectors that I'd stopped answering weeks ago. I shook her hand. Excellent. She released me and moved back behind the counter with that strange rustling walk. Tonight then, midnight sharp. The punch cards are by the back door. Your card is already prepared, the yellow one with your name. How do you know my midnight sharp, Marcus? Don't be late. Time is observed differently after midnight. She turned away, becoming statue still between the old jewelry and older shadows. I stood there for a moment, clipboard still in my hands, before setting it on the counter and leaving. The bell above the door rang twice as I exited, though I'd only passed through once. I spent the rest of the day in the McDonald's, using their Wi-Fi to research second-hand souls. I found almost nothing. No website, no social media, no reviews. Just a single mention in a 1978 newspaper article about local businesses, noting its grand opening. The picture showed a ribbon-cutting ceremony, but the faces in the photo were all blurred, as if the camera had moved at exactly the wrong moment. At 11:30 p.m., I sat in my car outside the store, watching the windows. No lights were visible inside. No movement. The street was empty except for a cat that walked by, saw the store, and immediately ran in the opposite direction. At 11:45, I got out of my car. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since sunset. My breath came out in clouds that seemed to linger too long in the air. At 11:55, I walked to the back door. It was painted red, though the paint was peeling to reveal different colors underneath. Blue, then green, then black, like geological layers of bad decisions. At 11:59, I found the punch card machine. It was ancient, probably from the 1950s, all brass and mechanical parts. A single yellow card sat in the slot marked Night Shift. My name was printed on it in neat typewriter font. Marcus Holloway, temporary. I didn't like that temporary qualifier. At exactly midnight, I punched in. The machine made a grinding sound like bones breaking, and the card stamped, 12:00 a.m., begin. The back door unlocked with a click I didn't just hear, but felt in my chest. I stepped inside. Night 1. The introduction. The store was different in the dark. Not just darker, different. The aisles stretched longer than they had during the day. The ceiling seemed higher, lost in shadows that the overhead fluorescence couldn't quite reach, and the smell had changed. Under the mothballs and mildew was something else now. Something that reminded me of old pennies and fresh earth. First things first, count the mannequins. I found them arranged throughout the store, positioned like customers frozen mid-shopping. They wore clothing from different decades, a 1950s housewife dress, a 1970s leisure suit, a 1990s grunge outfit. Their faces were the old style, with painted features that had faded and chipped over time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 mannequins. My chest tightened. There should be 7. The rules said if there were fewer, check the bathroom mirrors. The bathroom was at the back of the store, past the furniture section. I made my way through the maze of old chairs and tables, my footsteps echoing on the linoleum in a rhythm that didn't quite match my walking pace. The bathroom door was painted institutional green, with a sign that said, "Customers only," in faded red letters. I pushed it open. The fluorescent light flickered on automatically, casting everything in harsh white. There were 3 mirrors above 3 sinks, all spotted with age. In the middle mirror, I saw myself. Tired, unshaven, wearing the same clothes for the 3rd day. In the left mirror, I saw myself from a slightly different angle, though that should have been impossible given where I was standing. In the right mirror, I saw the 7th mannequin standing directly behind me. I spun around. Nothing there, just the bathroom stall, its door slightly ajar. I looked back at the mirror. The mannequin was still there, wearing a wedding dress that had yellowed with age. Its painted eyes seemed to track my movement. "Okay," I said aloud, my voice cracking. 7 mannequins, accounted for. I backed out of the bathroom, keeping my eyes on the spot where the mannequin should have been standing. The door swung shut. I heard the lock engage from the inside. 12:47 a.m. would come soon. I positioned myself by the donation door, a heavy steel door marked "Donations Accepted 24/7, though I was pretty sure that wasn't true. At exactly 12:47, 3 knocks echoed through the store. Slow, deliberate, the kind of knocks that expected to be answered. I opened the door. A figure stood in the alley, face hidden by a hood that seemed to absorb light. It held a cardboard box, the kind you'd use for moving. The hands that held it were wrapped in grey cloth, like bandages or burial shrouds. The figure extended the box toward me. Don't look at the donor's face. I kept my eyes on the box as I took it. It was heavier than it looked, and cold, as if it had been refrigerated. Or worse. Thank you for your donation, I said automatically. The figure made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been crying, or might have been something else entirely. Then it turned and walked away. Not down the alley, into the brick wall opposite the door. Through it, like the wall was just a suggestion. I closed the door and locked it. 3 deadbolts, 2 chains, and a bar that dropped into place. Seemed excessive for a donation door, but I was beginning to understand that nothing here was excessive. The sorting room was behind a door marked, "Sorting, do not disturb." Inside, metal shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with items waiting to be processed. Some were ordinary, clothes, books, dishes. Others were wrong. A clock that ticked backward. A doll whose eyes followed me. A music box that played without being wound. I set the box on the sorting table and opened it. Inside were photographs, hundreds of them, all black and white, all seemingly from different eras. They showed the store, second-hand souls, but in each photo, something was slightly off. In one, the mannequins were arranged differently. In another, the aisles ran perpendicular to how they were now. And in every single photo, there were people shopping, but their faces were all blurred. Every single face. At the bottom of the box was a note. For the collection, she'll know what to do. I locked the sorting room with the brass key I found hanging beside the door. The key was warm to the touch and had symbols carved into it that hurt to look at directly. At 1:17 a.m., I heard the crying. It came from the changing rooms, just like the rules said. Soft at first, like a child trying not to be heard. Then louder, more desperate. The sound of someone small and afraid and alone. I grabbed a toy from the children's section, a stuffed bear missing one eye, and approached the changing rooms. There were 3 stalls, all with their curtains drawn. The crying was coming from the middle one. I placed the bear on the floor in front of the curtain. The crying stopped immediately. Then, a small voice, "Mr. Buttons." The curtain moved slightly, and a pale hand, too small to be an adult's but too long to be a child's, reached out and took the bear. I heard giggling, but it was layered, as if multiple voices were laughing at slightly different speeds. "Thank you," the voices said in unison. I backed away. The curtain went still, but I could see shadows moving beneath it, shadows that didn't match any single form. At 2:22 a.m., the register rang. The sound was sharp in the quiet store, an old mechanical bell that echoed longer than it should have. I walked to the front counter, my shoes squeaking on the linoleum. The register's screen, an ancient LED display that shouldn't have still been working, showed a transaction. One memory, 367, or one tomorrow, 1423. One name, unused, 891. Total, 2681. The ceramic bowl next to the register contained exactly 26 by 81 days in coins and bills that looked older than they should be. Some of the bills had faces I didn't recognize. Presidents that never were, maybe, or hadn't been yet. I opened the register and placed the money inside. The drawer slammed shut on its own, nearly catching my fingers. A receipt printed out, though I hadn't seen a printer attached to the register. The receipt said only, "Transaction complete. Thank you for your sacrifice." I was starting to understand why they paid so well. The hours between 2:30 and 3:33 a.m. were relatively quiet. I spent them sorting through donations in the back room, trying not to think about what I'd seen. Some items were normal, used paperbacks, kitchen utensils, a lamp with a torn shade. Others made no sense. A jar of teeth, none of them quite the right size for humans. A compass that pointed toward the bathroom instead of north. A wedding ring engraved with a date from 1834, still warm as if recently removed. At 3:25 a.m., I remembered Rule 7. All mirrors must be covered at 3:33 a.m. I had 8 minutes. The supply closet was near the back door, marked with a sign that read, "Cleaning supplies." Inside, folded neatly on the top shelf, were black cloths. They felt like silk, but were heavier, darker than any fabric should be. The material seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to see the edges. I grabbed the cloths and started with the bathroom mirrors. The middle mirror showed my reflection. The left mirror showed an empty bathroom. The right mirror showed me, but older, gaunt, with something dark leaking from my eyes. I threw the cloth over it quickly. The full-length mirror in the women's clothing section was next. As I approached, I saw movement in it. Not my reflection, someone else. A woman in a dress from the 1950s, standing perfectly still, watching me. When I looked directly at the space the mirror showed, no one was there. In the reflection, she smiled and raised one hand in a small wave. I covered it at 3:32 a.m. There were 6 more mirrors scattered throughout the store. I found them all, beside a vanity, inside an armoire, mounted on the wall near the register, propped against a stack of books, hanging in the jewelry section, and one I almost missed, a small hand mirror face up on a shelf. As I threw the cloth over the last mirror, a clock somewhere in the store chimed 3:33. Every covered mirror rippled like water. I stood frozen, watching the black cloths move as if something underneath was pressing against them, trying to get out, or trying to get in. The movement lasted exactly 27 seconds, and then everything went still. The store felt different now, colder. The shadows were deeper, reaching across the floor like fingers, and I could hear something, a faint whispering from the vents, too quiet to make out words, but constant, insistent. "Don't speak the name you hear," whispered in the vents. I focused on not listening, on keeping the whispers at the edge of my awareness. I hummed to myself, old songs from the radio, anything to drown out that persistent susurrus. At 4 a.m. exactly, the radio turned on. It sat behind the register, an ancient transistor radio that probably dated back to the store's opening. The dial glowed green, and static hissed from the speaker before resolving into music. Big band jazz, the kind my grandfather used to play. Glenn Miller, maybe. In the mood, I let it play, watching the clock. The song lasted 3 minutes and 28 seconds. Then it started again. Same recording, same slight skip at the 2-minute mark where the trumpet wavered. 3 times. The rule said if it repeated more than 3 times, I needed to hide. The second playthrough ended. The third began. I stood with my hand on the radio's plug, ready to yank it out. The song played. The trumpet skipped. The music swelled toward the finale. The song ended at 4:13 a.m. Silence. Static. Then a different song. Moonlight Serenade. I exhaled slowly and moved my hand away from the plug. The music continued. Different songs from the same era, until 4:47 a.m. when it cut off mid-note. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the whispers in the vents that I was still trying not to hear. At 5 a.m., I returned to the sorting room to process donations. Most of the work was straightforward. Assign prices, attach tags, determine which section items belong to. But some items didn't want to be sorted. A leather jacket kept sliding back toward the front of the table, no matter where I put it. After the third attempt, I set it on a chair near the door. It seemed satisfied there. A set of china kept rearranging itself in the box, always in a different pattern. I left it alone and moved to other items. And there was a book, a journal with a brown leather cover and no title. When I picked it up to price it, it fell open to a page dated September 3rd, 1987. Day 23, working nights. I understand now why Michelle quit, why David disappeared. The things we see here aren't just in this store, they're using it. A doorway, transit point, feeding ground. I don't know. But I found a ledger in the basement. I know we're not supposed to go down there, but I had to know. Mrs. Whitmore has been running this place since 1978. Same Mrs. Whitmore. Hasn't aged a day in the photos I found. She's part of it. Maybe she started it. Maybe it started her. The mannequins used to be. The entry ended mid-sentence. The rest of the page had been torn out. I flipped through the journal, finding more entries. October 12, 1987. Saw the 7th mannequin outside the mirror tonight. It was wearing my jacket, the one I lost last week. How did it? October 30th, 1987. The whispers have a name now. I can almost hear it. Margaret. No, Marguerite. No. November 2nd, 1987. I know what the red tagged items are. I know where they go. I know what's in the basement. God help me, I know. The final entry was dated November 15th, 1987. If you're reading this, you're working nights. Get out. The money isn't worth it. Nothing is worth it. I thought I could finish my 6 months and leave. But I understand now. We don't leave. We just change positions. Check the mannequins. Really look at their faces. You'll see. You'll see us all. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tell my sister. The entry ended. The remaining pages were blank. I set the journal down with shaking hands. Then I walked out to where I'd seen the mannequins. 7 of them now, all visible, no longer hiding in mirrors. I approached slowly, looking at their faces. Most had the standard painted features, simple dots for eyes, curved line for a mouth. But the one in the wedding dress, the 7th one, had a face that was different, more detailed, more human. The eyes had depth, the mouth had texture, and something about the features seemed familiar, though I couldn't place why. I stepped back and returned to the sorting room. The journal was gone from where I'd left it. In its place was a red price tag, the number 100.00 written in ink that looked wet. Rule 8. If you find an item with a red price tag, do not touch it with bare skin. I used the tongs from behind the register to pick up the tag and carried it to a locked cabinet beneath the counter. Inside were other red tagged items, a hairbrush with strands of grey hair, a pair of glasses with cracked lenses, a wedding ring, a pocket watch stopped at $3.33, and now this price tag. Someone will collect it. The rule didn't say who. I was beginning to suspect I didn't want to know. The rest of the shift passed without incident. At 6 a.m., I uncovered the mirrors. Each cloth came away cold and damp, though the store was dry. The mirrors showed only normal reflections now, just me, exhausted and pale, moving through a thrift store in the early morning. At 6:45 a.m., I returned borrowed items to their original positions. I hadn't consciously borrowed anything, but I found objects displaced. The tongs I'd used were supposed to hang on a specific hook, the cloths folded in a specific way, the brass key returned to its nail, not left in the lock. Everything had a place, everything remembered. At 7:58 a.m., I stood by the time clock, waiting. The store had grown lighter as dawn approached, but that just made the shadows that remained seem darker by contrast. I could still hear whispers in the vents, faint but persistent. At 8 a.m., I punched out. The card stamped 8 a.m. End. Satisfactory. At 8:01 a.m., my phone buzzed. I checked the screen. A deposit notification, $570, from Secondhand Souls LLC. At 8:02 a.m., the front door unlocked with a click I felt in my chest. I walked out into the morning, into air that felt thin and clean after the store's atmosphere. The sun was rising over Bardstown, painting everything gold and normal and real. My car was where I'd left it, covered in morning dew. I sat inside and just breathed for 5 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Then I drove to McDonald's, ordered breakfast, actual food, not something stolen or skipped, and tried to convince myself that I'd imagined the worst parts. The money in my account said otherwise. I slept in my car until noon, woke up stiff and cold, and spent the afternoon at the library. I researched everything I could find about Secondhand Souls, about Mrs. Whitmore, about thrift stores with strange reputations. I found almost nothing useful, just that 1978 article and one other mention. A missing person report from 1987 for a man named David Keene, last seen leaving his job at a thrift store on 3rd Street. The photo showed a young man, maybe 25, with dark hair and a tired smile. The kind of smile that said life had been hard, but he was managing. I knew that smile. I'd seen it in my mirror before my mother died. At 11:45 p.m., I was back at the red door. Night 2, the patterns. The second night started the same way. Punch in at midnight exactly, count the mannequins, wait for the donation door. But I was more observant now, looking for details I'd missed. The store had layers, I was learning. Surface details that made sense, and underneath, patterns that didn't. The mannequins were positioned differently than they'd been the night before. The one in the leisure suit now stood near the changing rooms. The one in the wedding dress had moved to the front window, visible from the street. Had someone moved them during the day, or had they moved themselves? I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All present, all visible. No need to check the mirrors. But I did anyway, some paranoid instinct making me walk to the bathroom. The mirrors showed only normal reflections now. No 7th mannequin, no older version of myself, just fluorescent light and institutional green paint and me. The donation door knocked at 12:47 a.m. Same slow, deliberate rhythm. I opened it, keeping my eyes down. The same hooded figure stood there. Or maybe a different one. Impossible to tell. The box it offered was smaller tonight, made of wood instead of cardboard, with brass hinges that looked old. "Thank you for your donation," I said. This time the figure spoke. Its voice was layered, multiple tones at once, like a radio stuck between stations. "Are you keeping them safe?" I didn't know what them meant. "Yes," I lied. "Good. They need to be kept safe, until collection." The figure turned and walked away, not through the wall this time, but around the corner of the alley, moving in a way that suggested too many joints. I locked the door and carried the wooden box to the sorting room. It had a small brass latch but no lock. Inside were letters, dozens of them, still in their envelopes, all addressed to different people at the same address, 147 3rd Street, Bardstown, KY. This address, where the store now stood. The letters dated from 1952 to 1977. Different names, different handwriting, but all sent to the same building. Before it was second-hand souls, what had been here? I opened one letter at random, postmarked June 1965. "Dear Charlotte, I hope this letter finds you well, though I suspect you've moved on by now. We all do, eventually. The treatment is helping, Dr. Whitmore says, though I don't feel different, just tired. Always so tired. Tell Mother I'm sorry about the wedding. Tell her I couldn't help it. Tell her the voices started long before I came here. They say I can leave in 6 months if I follow the rules. 6 months seems both forever and no time at all. The other patients are kind, mostly, except for the ones who aren't patients at all. You can tell the difference if you look closely. The real ones blink, the others don't. Give my love to..." The letter ended there, torn off mid-sentence. No signature. A sanitarium. This had been a sanitarium, and Dr. Whitmore had run it. I opened another letter from 1973. "To whom it may concern, I'm writing to report the conditions at Whitmore Sanitarium. My brother has been a patient here for 8 months, and each visit he seems less like himself. He speaks about rules he must follow, about things he sees in mirrors, about a collection that must be maintained. The staff assures me this is progress, but I know my brother. Something is wrong here, something beyond medicine. I'm requesting his immediate release and a full investigation into..." Also torn off, also unsigned. Every letter in the box was incomplete. Everyone hinted at something wrong, something building, and everyone was addressed to someone at this building before it became second-hand souls. At the bottom of the box was a photograph, black and white, dated 1977 on the back. It showed the building's front, but the sign read, "Whitmore Sanitarium, established 1952. And standing in front of it, wearing the same high-collared dress, with the same too tight grey hair, was Mrs. Whitmore. Identical. Not aged well. Identical. The same face I'd seen 3 days ago when I'd asked about the job. I locked the sorting room and returned to the front of the store. The mannequin in the wedding dress was facing inward now, toward the racks of clothing. I hadn't heard it move. The face seemed more detailed than yesterday, more alive. The painted eyes had developed pupils. At 1:33 a.m., I heard the crying, but it wasn't coming from the changing rooms this time. It was coming from behind me, from the racks of clothing near the wedding dress mannequin. I grabbed a toy, a small stuffed rabbit, and turned slowly. A little girl stood between the racks, maybe 7 years old, wearing a nightgown that might have been white once, but had faded to grey. Her feet were bare. Her hair hung in tangles around her face. She was crying, but no tears fell. "Are you lost?" I asked, my voice cracking. She looked up at me. Her eyes were entirely black, no whites at all. "I can't find Mr. Buttons. Have you seen Mr. Buttons?" Mr. Buttons. That's what the voice from the changing room had called the bear. The one-eyed bear I'd given it last night. "Mr. Buttons is with a friend," I said carefully. "But here, would you like..." "I want Mr. Buttons." Her voice multiplied, became the same layered chorus I'd heard from the changing room. She opened her mouth wider than should be possible, and I saw that she had too many teeth, rows of them receding into her throat. I dropped the rabbit at her feet. She closed her mouth, bent down, and picked up the toy. When she looked up again, her eyes were normal, brown, human, wet with real tears. "Thank you," she whispered in a single, small voice. Then she walked backward into the clothing racks and disappeared. Not between the racks, but into them, like they were made of fog. My hands were shaking. I checked the clock. 1:41 a.m. 41 minutes until the register rang. 41 minutes to get my breathing under control. I spent the time doing inventory, counting items on shelves, trying to focus on the mundane. The store had thousands of items, and more arrived every night in those donation boxes. Where did it all go? The store never seemed more crowded. Items must sell during the day, must leave somehow. But I'd never seen a receipt for a daytime purchase, never seen any evidence that customers actually bought things. At 2:22 a.m., the register rang. I walked to the front counter. The screen showed 1 childhood, 45.67, 1 first kiss, 23 born 12, 1 mother's voice, 87.44, total 156.23. The ceramic bowl contained exactly 156.23. The bills were old, but not historical this time, from the 1990s and early 2000s. I placed them in the register. The drawer closed, the receipt printed, transaction complete, collection grows. Collection. That word again. The hooded figure had mentioned it. The journal from 1987 had mentioned it. What collection? What was being collected? I pulled out the register drawer manually, forcing it open. Inside were the bills I just placed there, plus the money from last night, plus what looked like years' worth of similar transactions. But underneath the money tray was something else. A ledger, bound in cracked leather. I pulled it out and opened it. Pages and pages of transactions, written in meticulous handwriting, dated back to 1978. November 3rd, 1978. Worst memory, childhood home. Patient, 47, $12.34. November 5th, 1978. One name, given at birth. Patient 52, $8.91. November 12th, 1978. One love, first and final. Patient 61, $147. The entries continued, year after year. The word patient changed to customer in 1982, and then to donor in 1985. But the pattern remained the same. Abstract things sold for specific prices, collected and catalogued. The most recent entries were from this week. November 19th, 2023. World memory, donor unknown, 367. November 20th, 2023. Born childhood, donor unknown, 45.67. Tonight's transaction was already written at the bottom of the page in handwriting I recognized. My handwriting. But I hadn't written it. The ink was still wet. November 21st, 2023. Firm mother's voice, donor MH, $87.44 MH, Marcus Holloway. My mother's voice, the memory of her voice. Was that what I just sold? I tried to remember the sound of her saying my name, the tone she used when she was proud of me, the way she sang while cooking. The memories were there, but distant now, like trying to hear someone speaking in another room. What had I done? I shoved the ledger back under the money tray and slammed the drawer. The register made that grinding, bone-breaking sound. From somewhere in the store, I heard laughter. Not the little girl's multiplied chorus, but something older, deeper, satisfied. At 3:25 a.m., I covered the mirrors again. The black cloths were where I'd left them, folded in the supply closet. Each mirror fought me this time, my reflection moving a half second behind my actual movements, like lag on a video call. I threw the cloths over them quickly, not looking too closely at what the delayed reflections were doing. At 3:33 a.m., the cloths rippled again, but this time I heard voices from beneath them. Whispers, please, one word repeated. Remember, remember, remember. The radio turned on at 4 a.m. Glenn Miller again. In the mood. The song played once, twice, 3 times. I stood with my hand hovering over the plug, counting down the seconds. The 3rd playthrough ended. Silence, static. The 4th playthrough began. I yanked the plug from the wall. The music stopped. The silence that followed was wrong, too complete, like all sound had been sucked from the room. I ran to the supply closet and pulled the door shut behind me. Inside, surrounded by cleaning supplies and those heavy black cloths, I counted to 27. Slowly. Each number felt important, like I was counting down to something or counting up towards something, marking time in a way that mattered to whatever rules governed this place. At 27, I heard the song stop outside, not cut off, properly end, with the final note trailing away. I waited another 30 seconds, then opened the closet door. The store was unchanged. The radio sat silent, but on the counter next to it was something new. a photograph in a tarnished silver frame. The photo showed the inside of the store, but decades ago, when it was still the sanitarium. Patients sat in chairs, reading or staring into space, and standing among them, wearing a white coat, was Mrs. Whitmore. The same Mrs. Whitmore. And next to her, I looked closer at the photo, my blood going cold. Next to her stood a man in orderly's clothing. His face was blurred, like everyone else's in the old photos I'd seen, but pinned to his chest was a name tag, just clear enough to read, David Keene. David Keene, the man who disappeared in 1987. He'd worked here when it was a sanitarium, before it became a thrift store. Or maybe he'd worked here as both. Maybe he'd never left at all. I thought about the journal entry. Check the mannequins, really look at their faces. You'll see us all. I walked slowly to where the mannequins stood. 7 of them. I examined each face carefully. Most were still simple painted features, but 3 of them. 3 had faces that were too detailed, too human. The one in the wedding dress, a woman's face, delicate features, eyes that seemed to track movement. The one in the leisure suit, a man's face, young, with that same tired smile I'd seen in David Keene's missing person photo. And the one in the 1950s housewife dress, an older woman's face, kind but worn, with an expression of eternal patience. They weren't mannequins, or they hadn't started as mannequins. I stumbled, backward, knocked over a rack of coats. The sound echoed through the store, and then, impossibly, one of the mannequins moved. Just slightly, just its hand, rising in that small wave I'd seen in the mirror. The one in the wedding dress, the one with the human face. I ran to the sorting room and locked myself inside. My phone showed 4:47 a.m. 3 hours and 13 minutes until I could leave. I sat on the floor, back against the door, and tried to steady my breathing. Something slid under the door. A piece of paper, yellowed with age. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a patient admission form from Whitmore Sanitarium, dated April 14th, 1973. Name, Charlotte Vance, age, 24. Admission. Reason, severe melancholia. Following cancelled wedding treatment plan, standard protocol, 6 months residential attending, Dr. E. Whitmore. Attached to the form was a photo, a young woman in a wedding dress, smiling at the camera. The same face I'd seen on the mannequin. The same face I'd seen in the mirror on my first night. Charlotte Vance hadn't left after 6 months. She'd changed positions. I stayed in the sorting room until 5 a.m., then forced myself to continue with the shift. I had to. The money was already in my account. I'd already made my first payment to the credit card company. I was committed now, bound by contract and desperation. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I sorted donations, avoiding the items that resisted. I returned borrowed things to their places. At 6:45 a.m., I uncovered the mirrors. Charlotte Vance's reflection stood in every single one, watching me work. That small sad smile on her face. At 8 a.m., I punched out, the card stamped, satisfactory. At 8:01 a.m., another $570 hit my account. At 8:02 a.m., I left through the front door and didn't look back. Night 3, the connection. I didn't sleep that day. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Charlotte Vance's face. Both versions. The smiling bride in the photo and the painted mannequin with eyes that followed. I kept thinking about the pattern. 6 months. The journal writer had mentioned it. The patient admission form specified it. Mrs. Whitmore had said the previous night, Cashier worked for 6 successful months before moving on. Moving on to what? To where? I spent the afternoon at the Nelson County Public Library, digging through old newspaper archives on microfiche. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, seemed surprised anyone still used the machine. "What are you researching, dear?" she asked. Whitmore Sanitarium. It was on 3rd Street, where the thrift store is now. Her expression changed, became guarded. That place, I'd forgotten about it. Closed down in 78, I think. There was talk at the time, nothing proven, you understand, about unusual treatment methods, patients who never left, families who couldn't get answers. What kind of treatment methods? She glanced around the empty library as if checking for listeners. Dr. Whitmore believed in collection therapy. That's what she called it. The idea was that mental illness stemmed from being too attached to traumatic memories, to painful experiences. She would help patients donate these memories, free themselves from the weight of the past. How do you donate a memory? I don't know, dear. And the families who complained said their loved ones came out different, empty, like something essential had been taken. The state investigated in 1977, but Dr. Whitmore closed the facility before they could complete their inquiry, sold the building, disappeared for a year, then came back and opened that thrift store. She's still running it, I said. Mrs. Whitmore, same woman. Mrs. Chen shook her head. Can't be the same woman. Dr. Evelyn Whitmore would be well over 90 by now, maybe a daughter, granddaughter. But I'd seen the photos, the same face in 1952, in 1977, in 1987, yesterday. Not aging, not changing, just continuing. I found articles about the sanitarium's closure. They were brief, buried in the back pages. Whitmore, sanitarium closes doors, Bardstown Courier, August 3rd, 1978. After 26 years of operation, Whitmore Sanitarium has ceased patient admissions and will close permanently on August 15th. Dr. Evelyn Whitmore, founder and chief physician, cited completion of research as the reason for closure. Current patients have been transferred to facilities in Louisville. The building at 147 3rd Street will be sold to private interests. Dr. Whitmore could not be reached for comment regarding complaints from former patients' families about unusual treatment protocols. And then, 2 months later, new business opens on 3rd Street, Bardstown Courier, October 12, 1978. Second-hand Souls thrift store opened for business this week at 147 3rd Street, the former location of Whitmore Sanitarium. Owner Evelyn Whitmore states the store will offer quality second-hand goods at reasonable prices and will maintain extended hours to serve the community. The store is currently seeking night shift employees. Interested applicants should inquire within. 45 years, the same owner, the same building, the same extended hours. How many night shift employees had there been in 45 years? How many had completed their 6 months? How many had moved on? I thought about the mannequins, 7 of them, 3 with human faces. Was that all that remained after 45 years? Only 3 who'd completed the transformation? Or were there others, elsewhere, in some collection I hadn't seen? At the library's genealogy section, I searched for information about my own family. My mother's maiden name was Harlow. She'd grown up in Bardstown, lived here her whole life until the medical bills forced us to sell her childhood home. She'd never talked much about her family, said most of them had moved away or passed on. I found her in the 1995 census, living at an address on 4th Street. Then I searched backwards, looking for other Harlows in Bardstown, and I found something that made my hands go numb. Harlow, Margaret, née Whitmore, born March 15th, 1947, married James Harlow, June 1969, died February 8th, 1987. Margaret Whitmore, married to James Harlow, which made her my grandmother, my mother's mother, who I'd never met. My mother had always said her mother died when she was young, didn't like to talk about it, and Margaret's maiden name was Whitmore. I searched for Margaret's connection to Dr. Evelyn Whitmore, found it in a 1952 birth announcement. Dr. Evelyn Whitmore is pleased to announce the birth of her daughter, Margaret Ann Whitmore. Dr. Whitmore's daughter, my grandmother, which made Dr. Evelyn Whitmore my great-grandmother. The job posting hadn't found me by accident. The money wasn't just generous, it was targeted. She'd been waiting for me, someone with the right qualities: desperation, isolation, and blood. At 11:30 p.m., I sat in my car outside Secondhand Souls, staring at the dark windows. I could leave, drive away, abandon 2 nights' worth of pay, find some other way to survive. But I thought about the ledger entry in my handwriting. Donor MH, I'd already given something, already paid a price. And some part of me, the part that had spent 3 weeks living in a car, that had watched my mother die by inches because we couldn't afford treatment, needed to know what 6 months would buy. At midnight, I punched in. The store felt different tonight, heavier. The air was thick, resistant, like walking through water. The overhead lights flickered in that specific pattern, front to back, 3 times. I closed my eyes and counted to 27, each number feeling like a small prayer. When I opened my eyes, Mrs. Whitmore stood in front of me. I hadn't heard her approach. She was just there, perfectly still, wearing that same high-collared dress. Up close, I could see the fabric was Victorian, from the 1890s, but showed no wear, and her skin, God, her skin was wrong. Too smooth, too perfect, like porcelain, like a doll's face. Marcus, she said, and her voice had that same layered quality as the hooded figures. You've been researching, questioning, seeking answers outside these walls. You're my great-grandmother, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Her smile revealed those too many teeth. Am I? Bloodlines are complicated things, but yes, Evelyn Whitmore bore a daughter in 1952, and that daughter bore another daughter in 1971, and that daughter bore you in 1995. 4 generations, all connected, all serving the collection. What collection? What are you collecting? Everything, she said simply. Everything people are too burdened to carry. Memories, loves, names, futures. I provide a service, Marcus. I always have. The sanitarium was too limited, too slow, but this, she gestured at the store, this allows for volume, efficiency. People donate what they don't want, and I preserve it. Keep it safe, add it to the collection. The mannequins, I said. Charlotte Vance, David Keane, they were employees. They finished their 6 months. They transcended, Mrs. Whitmore corrected. They gave everything, piece by piece, night by night, and when there was nothing left to give but themselves, they joined the collection. They're preserved here, Marcus. Perfect. Unchanging. No more suffering, no more loss. Isn't that beautiful? That's not transcendence, that's murder. Her head tilted at that wrong angle. Is it murder to accept what's freely given? Each of them chose to work here. Each of them accepted the pay. Each transaction at 2:22 a.m. was voluntary. They rang up their own sales, took their own payment, donated themselves coin by coin, memory by memory. No one forced them. But you didn't tell them what they were selling. I gave them rules, clear, specific rules. Everything they needed to know was in those rules. Not my fault if they didn't understand. She moved closer, and I could smell that flower water smell, sickly sweet. You're different though. You're family. You're owed an explanation, a choice. Work your 6 months and I'll take what you owe in small pieces, like the others. Or what? Or give it all now. Everything you are, everything you were, everything you might be. One transaction, one payment. In exchange, someone you love comes back. Your mother, Marcus, Margaret Harlow. She's in the collection. I can return her. My heart stopped. My mother is dead. Death is just another donation, Mrs. Whitmore said. She gave her life to cancer, piece by piece, but I collected what remained. Her memory, her voice, her love for you. It's all here, preserved. Give yourself completely, and she walks out that door, alive and whole. You're lying. Am I? She gestured toward the back of the store. A figure emerged from between the clothing racks. A woman in her late 40s, thin, wearing the clothes I'd buried her in 6 months ago. She had my mother's face, my mother's dark hair, my mother's gentle smile. Marcus, she said, and it was her voice. The voice I'd sold. The voice I couldn't quite remember. Baby, what's wrong? Why are you crying? I was crying, tears streaming down my face, my chest heaving. Mom. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. She moved toward me, arms outstretched. I stepped back. Something was wrong. The movement was too smooth, too perfect. And her eyes, they didn't blink. Just like the journal entry had said, the real ones blink, the others don't. You're not my mother, I whispered. The figure stopped. Its smile didn't waver. Of course I am. Don't you recognize me? Don't you love me anymore? What did you sing while you cooked? I asked. What was the song? The figure tilted its head, exactly like Mrs. Whitmore. I don't remember. Marcus, why are you asking me these things? Because I'd sold that memory. The memory of her voice, her songs. It didn't have access to what had been taken. This wasn't my mother. It was something wearing her shape, built from the pieces Mrs. Whitmore had collected. Put her back, I said to Mrs. Whitmore. Put her back in whatever box you keep her in. The figure's expression didn't change, but it stopped moving. Just froze in place like someone had pressed pause. Then it walked backward, the same way the little girl had, and disappeared into the racks. Mrs. Whitmore's smile faded. Disappointing. But you have time yet. 6 months to reconsider. 6 months to make payments. We'll discuss this again when you have less to give. She turned and walked toward the back of the store, that rustling sound following her. Complete your shift, Marcus. The donations will arrive soon. And do check the basement tonight. You'll find it illuminating. Rule 6 says never enter the basement. She paused at the edge of the shadows. Does it? How strange. I remember it differently. Then she was gone, melted into darkness. I stood there shaking. My mother's false image burned into my mind. The clock on the wall showed 12:38 a.m. 9 minutes until the donation door knocked. I had to keep working, had to keep following the rules, or as many as I could remember. But Mrs. Whitmore had suggested Rule 6 might be wrong, might be a lie. I walked to the back of the store, past the sorting room, to a door I'd been carefully avoiding. It was painted black, marked "Employees Only" in faded white letters. The doorknob was cold brass, shaped like a hand. I tried to remember the exact wording of Rule 6, never enter the basement. The door is marked "Employees Only," but you are not the kind of employee it means. But if Mrs. Whitmore wanted me to go down there, if she'd specifically told me to check it, then maybe the rule was protection from knowledge, not from danger. Maybe she needed employees who didn't know, who would blindly process donations without understanding. The door unlocked at my touch. Stairs led down into darkness that the overhead light couldn't penetrate. I found a flashlight behind the register. Old, heavy, the kind that could double as a weapon. The beam cut through the dark like a knife through water, showing wooden stairs that creaked under my weight. The basement was larger than the store above it, much larger. The walls extended beyond where the building's foundation should end, creating impossible geometry. And filling that space, stretching away into darkness, were shelves. Rows and rows of shelves, organized with military precision. Each shelf was labeled, not with product names, but with categories: memories, childhood, loves, first, names, given, voices, maternal, futures, hoped. And on those shelves were objects, thousands of objects, each one tagged with a name and date. I walked down the main aisle, flashlight beam dancing over the collection. A hairbrush labeled Sarah Chen, Mother's Voice, 1983. A pocket watch labeled David Keane, First Love, 1987. A wedding ring labeled Charlotte Vance, Future, Marriage, 1973. Every donation, every transaction at 2:22 a.m. Catalogued and preserved. I found the recent additions near the front, the photographs I'd accepted on night 1, sorted into boxes labeled with names of former sanitarium patients. The letters from night 2, filed under Correspondence, Unfinished. And then I found a shelf labeled Harlow Marcus, 2023. On it sat a single item so far, a small glass vial containing something that looked like smoke or fog or memory made tangible. The tag read, Mother's Voice, collected 11/20/23, 87-44-4. I picked up the vial. It was warm, almost alive. I could see shapes moving in the fog, my mother's face, her smile, her lips forming words I could no longer hear. That belongs to the collection now. I spun around. A man stood at the base of the stairs, young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a leisure suit from the 1970s. David Keane, but not the mannequin. Him, or what remained of him. His skin had a waxy quality, and his movements were too precise, but his eyes were human. Aware, trapped. You shouldn't be down here, he said. We're not supposed to see the collection until we've joined it. You're David Keane. You disappeared in 1987. Did I? I don't remember much from before. Just pieces, rules, duties, the collection. He moved closer, and I saw that his feet didn't quite touch the ground. You're new. 3rd night? 4th? 3rd. Then you haven't given much yet. Just small things. But it adds up, Marcus. Every night at 2:22, you'll sell something else, and you won't notice at first. Won't realize what you're losing. Until one night you'll ring up your name, your identity, yourself, and then you'll join us upstairs. Preserved. Perfect. Part of the collection. I won't, I said. I'll quit. I'll leave. Will you? David smiled sadly. Where will you go? Back to your car? Back to debt and hunger and shame? Mrs. Whitmore knows how to pick her employees. We're always desperate enough to stay. Always one more night, one more payment. Until there are no more nights, no more payments. Just the collection. How many? I asked. How many have there been? In the store? 7 of us so far. But in the sanitarium, before it became the store? Hundreds. She's been collecting for over 70 years, building something. Some nights I can almost remember what. Some purpose beyond just preservation. But then the memory slips away and I'm just... He looked at his hands, translucent in the flashlight beam. Just this. A sound from upstairs. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The donation door, David said. You need to go. And Marcus, don't come back down here. Knowing makes it worse. I'd forget if I could, but that's another thing she's taken. The ability to forget. I ran up the stairs, the vial still clutched in my hand. Behind me, I heard David's voice, fading. 6 months. That's all you have. Make them count. At the top of the stairs, I shoved the vial in my pocket and locked the basement door. My hands were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries. The donation door knocked again. I stumbled through the store and opened it. The hooded figure stood there, but tonight it wasn't alone. Behind it were others, a crowd of them, all hooded, all holding boxes. As I watched, they formed a line stretching down the alley and around the corner. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Collection night, the first figure said in that layered voice. We bring what we no longer need, what we've been holding too long. Accept it, preserve it, keep it safe. I don't, there are too many. Accept it, the voices chorused, or become it. I took the first box, then the second, then the third. They kept coming, box after box, each one cold and heavy. I carried them to the sorting room, stacking them until there was no more floor space, then in the hallway, then near the register. The figures kept coming, kept handing me boxes, their faces hidden but their hands visible. Some human, some not. Some that had been human once but had donated too much. At 1:04 a.m., the last figure handed me its box. Inside was a mirror, small and round, in a silver frame. When I looked into it, I saw not my reflection, but Mrs. Whitmore's, smiling that too many teeth smile. Welcome to the family business, her reflection said. 4 generations of Whitmores, all serving the collection. Your mother tried to escape it, married a Harlow, changed her name. But blood calls to blood, Marcus. You were always going to come here, always going to take your place. I'm not like you, I said to the mirror. Not yet, the reflection agreed. But give it time, give it 6 months. We'll see what's left of you then. I threw the mirror across the room. It hit the wall but didn't break. The glass spiderwebbed, and from each crack I heard laughter. Mrs. Whitmore's laughter, my grandmother Margaret's laughter, my mother's laughter, and underneath it all, my own laughter. Not now, but from some future version of myself who'd given everything and found it funny. The crying started at 1:33 a.m. Not from the changing rooms, not from the racks, but from everywhere. The entire store filled with the sound of sobbing, dozens of voices overlapping. I grabbed every toy I could find and placed them throughout the store, by the changing rooms, near the racks, on shelves, by the register. The crying continued. Then I remembered. The little girl had said she wanted Mr. Button specifically. Not just any toy, the specific one. I ran to the changing rooms and pounded on the middle stool. I need Mr. Buttons back, please. Just for tonight. I'll bring you something else. Anything else. The curtain opened a crack. The pale hand emerged, holding the one-eyed bear. I snatched it and ran through the store, setting it in different locations. Each time I moved it, the crying from that area stopped. I must have moved that bear 20 times before the store finally went silent. At 2:22 a.m., the register rang. I approached it with dread, knowing what I'd see, knowing I'd complete the transaction, because what choice did I have? The screen showed 1 future, specific, 247 bones, 91, 1 hope, unnamed, $156.33. 1 father's face, $89.11, total, $493.35. The bowl contained exact change. I placed it in the register, my movements mechanical. The drawer closed, the receipt printed, transaction complete, payment accepted. Thank you for your contribution to the collection. I tried to remember what my father looked like. He'd left when I was 3, never came back. I had one photo of him, somewhere in the boxes I'd put in storage when I lost my apartment. I tried to picture his face. Nothing. Just a blur where his features should be. Gone. Donated. Collected. The rest of night 3 passed in a fog. I covered mirrors at 3:33 a.m., their cloths rippling with more violence than before, the whispers beneath them louder. Remember us. Remember yourself. Remember before you can't. The radio played at 4 a.m. Glenn Miller, same pattern. On the third playthrough, I watched the radio carefully. The song ended before the fourth repeat, but this time, between the static, I heard voices. Patients from the sanitarium, maybe, or previous employees. Fragments of sentences. She promised 6 months. Can't remember my sisters. Collection grows and we... At 5 a.m., I sorted the donations from collection night. Most boxes contained normal items, clothing, books, household goods, but some contained impossible things. A box of photographs where everyone's face was my face. A jar labeled Tuesday, April 3rd, 1962, containing what looked like concentrated sunlight. A child's drawing of a building that shifted between sanitarium and thrift store depending on how I looked at it. And in one box, wrapped in cloth, I found a patient file. Harlow, Margaret Whitmore, patient, 127. Admitted, January 7, 1987. Reason, severe depression following mother's death. Treatment, collection therapy, voluntary participation. Status, deceased, February 8, 1987. My grandmother. She'd been a patient here at the sanitarium, even though it had supposedly closed in 1978. The dates didn't make sense unless it had never really closed. Unless Mrs. Whitmore had continued her work privately in the building that was supposedly a thrift store during the day, but something else at night. The file contained session notes in Mrs. Whitmore's precise handwriting. January 10th, 1987. Subject Margaret is responding well to initial collection protocols. Has donated memory of mother's final words. Reports feeling lighter. Payment, $43.50. January 24th, 1987. Subject has donated childhood home memory. First dance with husband James. Some resistance to deeper donations. Payment, $127.80. February 3rd, 1987. Subject donated daughter's name. Margaret. Became agitated when she couldn't recall why she chose it. Had to be sedated. Payment, $200 Dom 14s. February 7, 1987. Final collection. Subject donated remaining identity and will to live. Has joined the collection in permanent capacity. Specimen preserved in basement, shelf 7, position 3. Total payment, $1,247.92. My grandmother hadn't died of depression. She'd been collected, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. And my mother, she'd never known. She thought her mother had died naturally, had grieved her for 36 years without knowing the truth. I found another note clipped to the file. Daughter, Margaret's daughter, must not know. Standard death certificate filed. Body provided from reserve collection for burial. Subject's actual remains preserved in basement for future reference. Note, daughter carries bloodline. May be suitable for collection when circumstances align. My mother had been marked from birth. And when she died from cancer, Mrs. Whitmore had been there too, hadn't she? My mother had spent her final weeks at home on hospice. But I remembered a visitor, someone who'd come several times when I was at work. A tall woman in old-fashioned clothing. My mother had called her a grief counselor from the hospital. Mrs. Whitmore had collected my mother too. I ran back to the basement, rules be damned. Found shelf 7, position 3. There sat a glass case containing something. It had my grandmother's shape, roughly, but was made of that same fog smoke memory substance. Inside it, I could see fragments. A young woman laughing, a bride walking down an aisle, a mother holding a baby, all layered and compressed and preserved. And on shelf 12, position 8, I found another case. More recent. The fog inside showed my mother's face, her memories compressed into observable moments. Her cooking, her singing, her holding my hand in the hospital, her final breath. They were here, both of them. Not gone, not at peace, but collected, kept, preserved like specimens in a museum of stolen lives. You see now, David Keane said, from behind me. He'd followed me down. She keeps everything. Nothing is ever truly lost, she says. just reorganized, recategorized, added to the collection. How do I free them? I asked. Free them? Marcus, they're not trapped, they're preserved. There's a difference. There's not, I said. This is wrong, all of it. She's been doing this for 70 years. How many people has she collected? David gestured at the endless shelves stretching into impossible darkness. All of them. Every patient from the sanitarium. Every night employee from the store. Every donation from every hooded figure. This basement contains 70 years of collected humanity. And it's still growing. Why? What's the point? I don't know, but it's building towards something. There's a pattern to it, a structure. She's not random in what she collects. Certain memories, certain types of pain, certain flavors of humanity, like she's assembling pieces of a larger whole. Have you seen anything else down here? Other rooms? David pointed toward the back of the basement. There's a door, locked. I've never seen it open, but sometimes I hear sounds from behind it. Movement, breathing, something vast. I followed his gesture and saw it. A door made of dark wood, bound with iron, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. The same symbols that were carved into the brass key for the sorting room. What do you think is behind it? I asked. The real collection, David whispered. Everything here? He gestured at the shelves. This is just overflow, storage. The actual collection is through that door. And when she has enough, when the collection is complete, that door opens. And whatever she's been building all these years will be born. A sound from upstairs. The bell over the front door, ringing twice. 8 a.m., David said. Day shift is starting. You need to leave. Now. I ran up the stairs, through the store. The mannequins had repositioned themselves again. Now they stood in a circle around a register, all facing inward, like they were waiting for something. I punched out at 8 a.m. exactly. The card stamped, satisfactory, warning. Basement access unauthorized. The money hit my account at 8:01, 570. I left at 8:02, but not before grabbing the vial from my pocket, the one containing my mother's voice. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but leaving it felt like abandoning her. Night 4. The alliance I spent the day at a motel, paid for with the money Mrs. Whitmore had deposited. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was using payment for pieces of myself to buy temporary shelter, but I needed sleep, needed to think clearly. The vial sat on the nightstand, the fog inside swirling with my mother's captured voice. I held it up to the light and saw her lips moving in the smoke, forming words I couldn't hear. What would happen if I broke it? Would the memory return to me? Would it dissipate? Would it just become part of the collection in a different form? I couldn't risk it. Not yet. At noon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Marcus Holloway? A woman's voice, older, with a Kentucky accent. Who is this? My name is Patricia Chen. My daughter Sarah worked at Secondhand Souls in 1983. She lasted 4 months before I convinced her to quit. She's never been the same since. Can't remember her childhood, can't remember me half the time. But she's alive, and I'm grateful for that much. How did you get my number? I watch the store, Patricia said. I've been watching it for 40 years. I see who goes in for night shifts, and I try to warn them. Some listen, most don't. You've worked 3 nights now. You're starting to understand, aren't you? Yes. Then meet me, today, before your next shift. There are things you need to know, things that might help you survive. She gave me an address, a house on 5th Street, 10 minutes from the store. I agreed to meet at 4 p.m. The house was a small ranch, well maintained, with a garden full of autumn flowers. Patricia Chen answered the door before I knocked. She must have been watching for me. She was in her 70s, with sharp eyes and hands that trembled slightly. Come in quickly, she said. I don't like standing where the store can see. Inside, the living room was covered in papers, photographs, maps. A conspiracy theorist's dream, except this conspiracy was real. On one wall was a timeline of Secondhand Souls, with names and dates written in different colored markers. I've been documenting this for decades, Patricia said, gesturing at her research. After Sarah came home wrong, I needed to understand. Needed to know what that place was doing. What did you find? Dr. Evelyn Whitmore was born in 1901. That makes her 122 years old. But she doesn't age because she's not entirely human anymore. She's part of her own collection. She's been donating and reabsorbing pieces of herself for over 70 years. replacing what degrades with what she collects from others. She's a composite now, a walking archive. Patricia showed me photos. Dr. Whitmore in the 1930s, looking exactly the same. In the 1950s, in the 1980s, in last year's newspaper article about local businesses. The sanitarium was cover, Patricia continued. She wasn't treating mental illness. She was harvesting it, collecting trauma, pain, memory, identity. She developed a technique, something between hypnosis and surgery, that could extract abstract concepts and make them physical. The vial in your pocket, that's her technique made manifest. I pulled out the vial. Can I get this back? Can I reabsorb it? I don't know. Sarah tried with some of hers, found a few vials in the basement, broke them. She said it felt like breathing in smoke. The memories came back fragmented, wrong, mixed with other people's memories that were stored nearby. She remembered her childhood, but also someone else's childhood, and couldn't tell which memories were really hers. So they're gone. Everything she takes is just gone. Maybe not, Patricia said. She pulled out a leather journal, old, worn, but carefully preserved. This belonged to someone who worked at the sanitarium in 1976, a nurse named Helen Corvus. She figured out part of what Whitmore was doing and documented it. She disappeared in 1977, right before the state investigation, but she left this with her sister. I tracked down the sister in 1995, got her to give it to me. I opened the journal. The entries were dense, technical, describing Dr. Whitmore's collection process in detail. But near the end, I found something important. October 3rd, 1976. I've discovered a central storage unit. It's not in the basement with the individual collections. It's deeper, through the iron door. Dr. Whitmore calls it the synthesis chamber. All the collected pieces flow there eventually, merging into something larger. She's building a constructed consciousness, a mind made from thousands of donated minds. She says when it's complete, it will be perfect. All of humanity's experiences, none of its suffering. A God made from our discarded parts. October 17th, 1976. The chamber is almost full. I can hear it thinking, dreaming, wanting. Dr. Whitmore speaks to it like a child. She says it will be born soon, says it will remake everything, return what was taken in a purified form. But I've seen what happens to the donors. They don't get their pieces back. They just become hollow. October 30th, 1976. I found the failsafe. There's a way to shut down the collection, to release everything back to its sources. The brass key that locks the donation room, it's a master key. It fits the iron door. And behind that door, there's a mechanism, a reversal protocol. If someone could get inside during a collection cycle, during the moment when the chamber is receiving donations, they could trigger the reversal. Everything would return. Everyone would be restored. November 4th, 1976. I'm going to try it, tomorrow night. God forgive me if I fail. The entry ended there. No more pages. Helen never made it, Patricia said quietly. She disappeared November 5th. I think she tried, and Whitmore caught her. She's probably in the collection now, but the information is real. I've verified as much as I can. The brass key does fit multiple locks, and there is a larger cycle. Whitmore collects more aggressively some nights than others, like she's building towards something. Collection night, I said. Last night, hundreds of hooded figures brought donations. It was different from the regular single donation at 12:47. Collection night happens once a month, Patricia said. On the new moon, when it's darkest. The next one is in 27 days, but there's a bigger cycle too. Every 6 years, there's a grand collection. The store closes for the night. Whitmore calls in every entity she's bound, every preserved employee, every collected consciousness. Everything flows into the synthesis chamber at once. When's the next grand collection? Patricia's expression was grim. December 21st, 6 weeks from now. Winter solstice, the longest night. If Helen's information is right, that's when the synthesis will be complete, when the constructed God will be born, when Whitmore's 70-year project reaches fruition. What happens then? I don't know, but I know it won't be good. A consciousness made entirely from donated trauma, pain, and loss, from pieces people were desperate enough to give away. That's not a God, that's a monster. I thought about the iron door, about the breathing David had heard behind it, about 70 years of collected humanity compressed into one entity. I have to stop it, I said. You can't. You're one person, and you're already compromised. You've donated pieces of yourself. The more you donate, the more she owns you, the less free will you have. By December 21st, you'll have worked 6 weeks. 6 weeks of nightly donations. You'll barely remember why you wanted to stop her. Then I do it sooner, before I lose too much. The reversal only works during a major collection cycle. You need the chamber to be active, accepting donations. Any other time, you'd just be releasing chaos. The next opportunity is the new moon collection night in 27 days. 27 days, 27 more shifts, 27 more donations at 2:22 a.m. What would be left of me by then? Help me, I said to Patricia. You've been studying this for 40 years. Help me figure out how to survive until collection night and trigger the reversal. She studied me for a long moment. I'm an old woman, Marcus. I can't go into that store. Whitmore knows me, knows I've been watching, but I can prepare you. Tell you what Sarah learned, what Helen documented. Give you the best chance I can. She spent the next 4 hours telling me everything. The rules I'd been given were real but incomplete. There were hidden rules, exceptions, loopholes. The entities in the store were bound by specific limitations that could be exploited, and the timing of everything mattered. 222, 333, 4 rack, specific numbers that related to the collection process. Whitmore is powerful, but she's bound by her own rules, Patricia explained. The collection only works if it's voluntary. She can manipulate, can create situations where giving seems like the only choice, but she can't force it. That's why the register transaction happens. You have to complete it yourself. You have to take the money from the bowl and put it in the register. That's the voluntary act. What if I don't? Then the transaction fails. But the next night, it will show doubled. Everything you didn't donate yesterday plus today's donation, and it compounds. By the third night of refusing, the store itself becomes hostile. By the fourth night, you can't leave. The money deposits anyway, and you're in debt to the collection. Debt that can only be paid in one way. So I have to donate something every night. Yes, but you can control what you donate if you're smart about it. Think of small things, unimportant things, memories you don't need, the taste of coffee you don't drink anymore, the name of a teacher you hated. Feed the collection, but feed it scraps. I thought about what I'd already lost. My mother's voice, my father's face, an unnamed hope, a specific future. Were those scraps, or had I already given too much? At 11:30 p.m., I returned to Secondhand Souls. Patricia had given me a small notebook with strategies, observations, techniques Sarah had learned during her 4 months. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had. At midnight, I punched in. Night 4 began. The mannequins were arranged differently again. Now they stood at the end of each aisle, facing outward like sentries. 7 guards watching 7 paths. Charlotte Vance's mannequin was in the main aisle, directly in my sightline from the register. She raised her hand in that small wave. I waved back. It seemed rude not to. The donation door knocked at 12:47. I opened it to find not a hooded figure, but a woman in her 30s, wearing modern clothes, jeans, a hoodie, running shoes. She looked solid, real, alive. She held a small box. I need to donate this, she said, and her voice was normal. No layering, no wrongness. I can't carry it anymore. What is it? I asked. She opened the box. Inside was a photograph of a little boy, maybe 5 years old, smiling at the camera. My son. He died 3 years ago. Car accident. I can't look at his picture without breaking down. I can't remember him without wanting to die. Please, take the memory, keep it safe, let me live. This was what Mrs. Whitmore offered, relief from unbearable pain. And looking at this woman's haunted eyes, I understood why people donated willingly. Are you sure? I asked. I'm sure. How much does it cost? You don't pay, I said. You donate. This is free. She handed me the box, and the moment it left her hands, something changed in her expression. The grief faded. Not to peace, but to nothing. Just absence. She blinked, looked around as if unsure why she was standing in an alley behind a thrift store at 12:47 a.m. Thank you, she said vaguely, then turned and walked away. I locked the door and carried the box to the sorting room. Inside was just the photograph. But as I watched, the image began to move. The boy smiled, waved, laughed silently. Then he faded, becoming translucent, and flowed out of the photograph into the air, where he dissipated like smoke, collected, preserved, gone. I found a children's toy, a small car, and placed it in the box with a note, remembered with love. I didn't know if the woman would ever know about it, but it felt important to acknowledge what she'd lost. The crying started at 1:17 a.m., earlier than usual. I grabbed Mr. Buttons and began my circuit of the store, but tonight the crying multiplied. Every time I silenced one source, another started. The changing rooms, the racks, the furniture section, the bathroom, the sorting room, everywhere. I was running back and forth, placing the bear, waiting for silence, moving it again. On my 7th trip, I passed Charlotte Vance's mannequin and noticed something new. Tears on her painted face, not painted tears. Actual moisture running down the porcelain cheeks. I stopped. Charlotte, can you hear me? The mannequin didn't move, but the crying around me changed pitch, became a single voice instead of many. Charlotte's voice, I realized. All the crying was her, echoing from multiple locations. What do you need? I asked. The mannequin's arm moved, slow and jerky, pointing toward the back of the store, toward the basement door. You want me to go to the basement? The crying intensified. Yes, that meant. Or maybe it meant please. Or maybe it meant I'm sorry. I went to the basement and found shelf 7, position 3, my grandmother's case. But now, next to it was Charlotte Vance's case. Shelf 7, position 4. I hadn't noticed it before. The fog inside showed her memories. A wedding that never happened. A groom who'd left her at the altar. Her mother's face when she tried to kill herself. The sanitarium doors opening. Dr. Whitmore's smile. The slow loss of everything until only the collection remained. There was a small card attached to the case. Vance, Charlotte. Collected 1973. Preserved in position upstairs. Request to view collection. Denied. But someone had written in different ink below. Request filed 1987. Still denied. Request filed 1995. Still denied. Request filed 2003. Still denied. Request filed 2011. Still denied. Request filed 2023. Pending. Charlotte had been requesting access to her own memories for 50 years, wanting to remember herself, to see what had been taken, and Mrs. Whitmore kept denying her. I touched the case. The glass was cold. The fog inside swirled toward my hand, and for a moment, I felt Charlotte's memories trying to flow into me. Her childhood, her hopes, her pain, all of it pressing against the glass, desperate for any consciousness that would hold it. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'll try. On collection night, if I can trigger the reversal, you'll get everything back, I promise. The crying stopped. I went back upstairs. Charlotte's mannequin had returned to its neutral position, arm at its side, but the tears on its face remained. At 2:22 a.m., the register rang. I approached slowly, Patricia's advice echoing in my mind. Control what you donate. Feed it scraps. The screen showed one grandfather's name, 2371, one third grade, 6743, one first pet, 4129, total, 13243. Small things, a grandfather I'd never met, a school year I barely remembered, a goldfish that had died when I was 8. I could afford to lose these. I took the money from the bowl and placed it in the register. The drawer closed. The receipt printed. Transaction complete. Acceptable donations. Collection grows. I tried to remember my grandfather's name. Nothing. Just a vague sense that my mother's father had existed, but no name, no face beyond what I'd already lost. 3rd grade was a blur now. I knew I'd been in school, but couldn't recall my teacher, my classmates, any specific events. And my first pet. I remembered having a fish, remembered the bowl on my dresser, but couldn't recall what I'd named it or what it had looked like. Small losses, manageable losses, but they added up. The rest of the night followed the familiar pattern. Mirrors covered at 3:33. Radio at 4 a.m., stopping at exactly 3 repetitions. Sorting at 5 a.m., where I processed the mother's donation box and felt sick doing it. At 6:23 a.m., something new happened. The front door opened, though it should have been locked. A man entered, middle-aged, wearing a business suit that looked expensive. He walked through the store like he knew where he was going, picked up several items, a lamp, a picture frame, a set of dishes, and brought them to the register. Rule 11. If a customer enters despite the locked doors, serve them normally, but do not accept money. Did you find everything okay? I asked, my voice shaking. Yes, thank you. He pulled out his wallet. How much? No charge. These items have already been paid for. He looked confused. But I should pay something. You already have, I said, though I didn't know what that meant. He nodded slowly, understanding something I didn't. I suppose I did, a long time ago. He gathered his items and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. You're new here. How long has it been? 4 nights. I worked here in 1994. Made it 5 months before I understood what was happening. Quit before the 6th month, but I'd already given too much. I come back sometimes to shop, to try to buy back what I donated. It never works. The items aren't what I lost. They're just placeholders, reminders of absence. What did you lose? My daughter's childhood, all 12 years of it. I can see her as an adult, interact with her normally, but I have no memories of her growing up. No first words, no first steps, no school plays or bedtime stories. Just a gap where those years should be. His eyes were wet. Don't finish your 6 months. Whatever they're paying you, it's not enough. He left. The door locked behind him with a click that sounded like finality. At 8 a.m., I punched out. Satisfactory. At 8:01 a.m., $570 appeared in my account. 4 nights down. 23 to go until collection night. Night 5 to 12, the descent. I'm going to tell you about the next 8 nights in compressed form, because they blur together in a pattern of small horrors and smaller losses. Each night followed the rules. Each night took something at 2:22 a.m. Each night, I became less. Night 5, donated my high school graduation, my first job, my childhood address, $287.92. Met another former employee, a woman from 2015 who came back to shop. She'd lost her ability to feel joy, could function, could smile, could go through motions, but genuine happiness was gone. She bought a music box that wouldn't play. Night 6, donated my sense of direction, my fear of heights, my knowledge of my mother's birthday. $341.18. The little girl appeared again, now with more children. 7 of them, all with black eyes, all asking for Mr. Buttons. I had to find 7 different toys to satisfy them. They giggled in chorus and faded into the walls. Night 7, donated memories of my best friend from college, my first car, my favorite song, 4/1967. David Keane appeared and warned me that collection night was in 20 days. Said the store would become more aggressive as it approached, hungry for donations to feed the synthesis chamber. Night 8, donated my knowledge of cooking, my taste for chocolate, my memory of my first kiss. 382.44. Mrs. Whitmore appeared and congratulated me on reaching 1 week. Said I was doing better than most, that I had strong bloodline resilience. Offered me a bonus if I donate something substantial, a core memory, a defining trait. I refused. She smiled and said I'd reconsider eventually. Night 9, donated my ability to whistle, my memory of learning to ride a bike, my grandmother's first name, $298.71. Realized I just donated the name I'd been researching, Margaret. I knew she was my grandmother, knew she'd been collected, but couldn't remember what to call her. Just my grandmother, no name attached. Night 10, donated my teenage years, specific events, not all of them. My first apartment, my comfort with darkness, $523.88. That last one was a mistake. After donating my comfort with darkness, the shadows in the store became threatening. I spent the rest of the shift with all the lights on, and they still weren't enough. Night 11, donated my father's first name, my knowledge of state capitals, my memory of my mother's funeral, $467.92. That last one hurt more than I expected. I knew she died, knew I'd grieved, but the specific day was gone. The flowers, the eulogy, the feeling of dirt hitting the coffin, all gone. Night 12, donated my sense of smell, my ability to draw, my memory of why I'd chosen my major in college, $391.33. After losing my sense of smell, the store's constant flower water decay scent disappeared. Should have been a relief, but instead it made everything seem more distant, less real. 12 nights, 12 donations, $4,174.96 collected. and I was becoming hollow.